Councillor Mike Baldock, and I will be chairing this evening's meeting. The meeting will be recorded and proceedings will be conducted in accordance with the Council's constitution, including procedural rules, which are available on the Council's website. Agenda item 1 is emergency evacuation procedure. There's no planned evacuation drill this evening, and accordingly, if the alarm sounds, it is to be treated as a genuine need to evacuate. There are emergency exits over there and by the lifts where you came in. Please do not use the lifts. On exiting, you will be directed to the assembly point, and it is important that you remain there and do not return to the building until I have announced that it is safe to do so. If anyone present will need assistance in evacuating, could you please inform me now so that we can make necessary arrangements to assist you? No. This meeting has a semi-quasi-judicial role and determines the rights and obligations of the applicant. Members must consider each application and everything that is said in the meeting concerning the application and make their decision based solely on their planning judgment of the information available to them. I'll inform members at this point. In future, I will be asking if you've been lobbied at all by developers or organised groups, so that can be declared at the meeting. Following a decision by members, delegated authority is given to the planning officer to issue the decision notice. Planning permission is not granted or refused until the issue of that decision notice. Right. Any member of the council who is not a member of the planning committee may attend as a visiting member and may speak, having given prior notification. Such visiting members may, of course, include ward members, and whilst visiting members can speak on an application, they are not permitted to vote. Any member acting as a substitute on the planning committee must have undertaken appropriate training before doing so. Members must remain in the meeting for the whole time that each item is being debated and should not vote on that item unless they have done so. I would now like to welcome our public speakers and remind you that you have 3 minutes to speak, and an audible warning of time will be given when there are 30 seconds remaining. If a meeting is deferred to conduct a site meeting, you may speak both at this meeting and at the site meeting, but there will be no further opportunity to speak on the matter when it comes back to the planning committee. The meeting will follow the order set out in the agenda, unless I amend the order if there is good reason for doing so. In particular, I will take any items where a member of the public has registered to speak first, before moving on to the remainder of the agenda, and I will verbally reorder the agenda as appropriate. Item 2, apologies for absence and substitutes.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies have been received from Councillor Paul Stephen, who is substituted by Councillor Richard Palmer, from Councillor Simon Clark, who is substituted by Councillor Angela Harrison, and from Councillor Elliot Jays, who is substituted by Councillor Chris Palmer. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. I invite members if they have any disclosable pecuniary interests under the Localism Act of 2011.
Chair, yes, I declare non-pecuniary interest in item 6, the blue papers, as I was asked as a ward councillor my opinion, which I gave an opinion at the time. So I shall be leaving the meeting when that's discussed.
Thank you. Any others? Councillor Palmer. Richard.
Interest, but on item 3.1, Highway Road, Newington. I spoke.
Sorry, Councillor Palmer, can you bring your mic?
Sorry, I spoke as ward member on this application, which is 3.1 Woodland Farm. I spoke as the ward member against this application. I have voiced opinions against it. Even so, I might look at this with an open mind. I feel that the applicant would feel that I was predetermined. So I may speak as board member, but I will leave the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Booth.
Thank you, Chairman. Deferred item 1, I attended the site visit by the planning committee. As a member of the public, I was not then a Swallow Borough councillor, and I attended and it was minuted as a member of the public.
Thank you. So you're not declaring that as a disclosable pecuniary interest?
I just like things transparent.
Thank you. Any disclosable non-pecuniary interests? Okay. I would like to remind the meeting that where it is possible that a fair-minded and informed observer, having considered the facts, would conclude that there is a real possibility that a member might be predetermined or biased on any agenda item, the member should declare this possibility and then leave the room whilst that item is considered. I'd also like to remind members, if you're on the planning committee and you speak as a ward member, not as a member of the planning committee, you are effectively absenting yourself from that item and will not be able to vote. Item 4, minutes of the meeting. I wasn't there. Right, to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of April 2023 as a correct record, subject to an amendment to minute number 822, item 2.3, which should now read: the committee also resolved unanimously that the twin application 23-500-857 hybrid be delegated to officers for approval on similar items to item 2.3. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Do I need a second on that? No, excellent. Item 5, deferred item. To consider item 21/505041/out, land north of Lyle Road, East Church, Kent. Can I invite the planning officer to provide a summary and update on the application?
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies for the delay. Set the presentation. Okay, so this application is for 63 dwellings with supporting infrastructure. It's in outline form and it's only access that's been determined at this stage. Layout, scale, appearance and landscaping are reserved for future consideration should the application be approved. There's a bit of a delay. So this application was previously reported to Planning Committee on the 9th of March 2023 and was deferred for a site visit which was held on the 4th of April. I just want to draw your attention to the report where it refers to the 8th of March committee throughout. This should read as the 9th of March throughout the report. Also during the committee on the 9th of March, the members felt that the report didn't clearly set out or address the parish council's concerns. The report was not clear and information was missing, and there was a request as to whether affordable housing could be sought. Usually there would not be a presentation like this for deferred items, and so it would just consist of an update. But given the concerns raised regarding the report, a review has been undertaken and an update report has been provided with conditions, and that's in your agenda pack. Tonight's presentation will also be a little bit more detailed than usual, given that there are new members on the committee. I just want to draw your attention also to the tabled update with a further rep received from East Church Parish Council and the officer response to that and an amendment to condition 16. So this is the application site here outlined in red, and there are two public rights of way, one of them crossing, you can just see a faint outline here.
Hang on, sorry. Display. Very good.
It's because of the sun. It's the sun.
We haven't got blinds or curtains. Would you all like to come here?
That one.
Right. Oh, you can see why. If anybody who can't see a screen would like to come forward and stand, that would be acceptable.
We'll just wait for people to move into position.
Okay, I think everybody's had a look. Please.
Thank you. So we have two public rights of way, one cutting across here and one running up the side and then coming across here. Each church is here and then there's a development site here. You'll notice that the boundaries of the site don't go right up to East Church Road, which just runs off the side of this photograph here. So this is the next site with the red outline depicting the application site and the blue outline showing the extent of the applicant's ownership. And we have Lower Road here moving into the High Street, East Church Road just off the side here and Warden Road just here. There is a full planning permission for this site adjacent to the one we're considering today. That's for 15 dwellings. So what we're considering today is the principle of the development. Is it suitable for residential accommodation and is the access suitable to serve that development? This slide here shows a parameter plan which sets out the broad intentions for the development. So you can see on the edges of the site, it's proposed as greeneries and for soft landscaping. This sort of yellow beige area is showing the extent of the built form. And that's sort of centrally located away from the edges and wraps around that development site adjacent. And then the access is shown from Lower Road here. This is the detailed plan for the access arrangements coming into the site. So this is a matter for consideration tonight. And it does provide adequate vision displays and a footway into the site. No objections have been raised from the highways officer with regard to the access and the impact on the road network. So this shows an illustrative layout. This is one way the development could be achieved on the site, but it is not fixed should this application be approved. This would come forward at a later date. And it shows sufficient space is left for landscaping, which is basically allowing for a landscape-led approach to the scheme. Landscape and ecological concerns were raised in the consultation responses and at the site visit. Officers consider that as a result of the landscape-led approach to the development, it would not result in harm to the character and appearance of the locality. It is acknowledged that the proposal would be highly visible from some viewpoints, especially in the short term, particularly from this public right of way down the bottom here, which would be slightly rerouted as part of the proposal. But with the landscape-led design and when it reaches maturity, it is felt in the long term there would be no detrimental harm. And the landscape and design of the development will include native species and ecological mitigation and enhancement, which is secured by conditions. KCC, as the ecological advisors for the council, have confirmed that biodiversity net gain can be achieved. So moving through some photographs of the site. So this is taken from Lower Road looking north. So this is the bus stop here that currently exists outside of the site. A new access would be created just to the right of the picture, so just off of the picture here, and a new footway proposed along Lower Road towards the east to connect to East Church. And this slide shows the view from Lower Road as you approach the roundabout, looking northwest. So this is standing approximately opposite the boundary of the adjacent development site, and the mobility hub that's proposed and the covered bus stop that's proposed would be just located to the left of the picture. And this is a photograph looking from East Church Road towards the east, with Lower Road just there. Final slide is just to update on what's been submitted since the previous committee, and there's been 3 documents: a transport note providing clarity around highway surveys and describing the benefits of the mobility hub, an update ecological appraisal and biodiversity net gain calculations. Concerns and questions were strongly expressed at the site meeting regarding highways impact and how the surveys were undertaken. So the highways note has been provided to address that. However, the Highways Authority and National Highways, which formerly Highways England, have not raised any highway safety objections, and they are satisfied in terms of the capacity within the network. The transport note clarifies the methodology for assessment, and surveys were not possible at the time of developing the application due to COVID. Modelling using an accepted model was undertaken and data used from a validated base. This has been an accepted approach from the Government and Planning Inspectorate during the COVID time. Also, concerns raised through consultation responses and strongly expressed at the meeting, they are recognised in terms of the highways impact, but no objections have been received from the statutory highways consultees. And to refuse on highways grounds, the council would be at risk of costs if we are unable to defend any reason for refusal without sufficient evidence. A summary is provided in terms of the mobility hub, and a condition is recommended to secure details when reserved matters come forward, should it be approved. And the updated ecological report and the biodiversity net gain calculation was submitted to provide an update to an earlier version of a similar report. It's not materially different to what was previously submitted, and the BNG calculation was submitted to demonstrate that it could be achieved. But again, this would be a detail that would come forward at a later date if it's approved and landscaping reserve matters come forward. KCC Ecology were consulted in relation to that, just to confirm they were still satisfied with the information that had been submitted. They were satisfied, and the comments are set out in the update report. And lastly, the affordable housing question, the applicant has confirmed that they can provide 15% of the units on the site as affordable. This would equate to 10. And so as we come to the end of the presentation, one of the important matters is the planning balance when we're coming to a decision. The council doesn't have a 5-year land supply, and so there is a presumption in favour of sustainable development. This means that the application should be granted unless material considerations say otherwise. We as officers have weighed up the material considerations as set out in the original report and the update report, and we consider that whilst it's outside of the confines of the village, and therefore it does sit in the countryside, the benefits of the proposal do outweigh the harm, and the application is considered acceptable from our point of view, with reasons set out in the committee report and the update report and the tabled update, and is recommended for approval subject to the conditions and section 106. Thank you.
Thank you for that comprehensive update. Can I now invite any visiting members to speak? Do we have any in the room first? Councillor Mundy.
What, the front? All right. I've never done this before, sorry. So I'm speaking against the development. Eastchurch is a small and beautiful village, and quite frankly, I think that Eastchurch and the surrounding area should stay that way. There's a lovely comment that's been put on by a member of the public that says that Kent is meant to be the Garden of England, but quite frankly, there isn't going to be a lot of garden left with the way that with the way that housing developments are taking place. The access site will be onto the lower road. This is the only main route on and off the island, so it will definitely, there's no doubt that it will increase the levels of congestion. And add more cars onto the road, which increases chances of accidents. And if there is an accident on the lower road, the entire island simply grounds to a halt. There's mentions on the application about the travel hub as you enter the site, as it is on the illustrative guide. It says about cycling. Well, I take my hat off to anyone that's going to cycle on the lower road. I've done it a few times and I've had to bail into a bush because it's just not safe. Plough Road isn't safe, and Eastchurch Road isn't particularly safe either if you're trying to get up into Minster. There's also a bit there about a bus stop. What's the point? There aren't any buses anymore. The island has lost 9,000 GP spaces, and building more houses is not going to improve that. Quite frankly, there are a lot of problems on the island and to contend with in today's society. Lack of GP spaces, lack of school spaces, lack of public transport, and I can't see that building more houses is going to solve that issue or any of the issues. Also, in the section 106 about secondary education, it says there is £1,135 going to be given to secondary schools. Both of the secondary schools listed are grammar schools that are not on the island. We have a real issue with the Oasis Academy at the moment. There have been a lot of negative reports about it, and quite frankly, I think that they deserve the money more, because that's where children on the island should be able to go to school. We shouldn't have situations where children have to travel miles, waking up at ridiculous times in the morning to catch buses to take them to the schools that are in Sittingbourne.
Thank you, Councillor Mundy. Do we have Councillor No on the? Yep. Councillor No, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, sorry? Hello?
Let's carry on.
Okay, so, thank you, Chairman. Yes, actually, I am echoing what Councillor Gibson said. The Eastchurch Parish Council is absolutely against the application. This is a separated community, a deprived community with very few services, very few jobs. It has the one lower road to access it. GP appointments are already impossible to get. How can 63 new houses be accommodated? There's just no infrastructure. And again, with the lower road, despite the highway report, it doesn't take much to drive down there to see the problem. It's already an issue. And with respect to what he said about cyclists, he's absolutely right. It's a death trap. There is no supermarket here, no shopping, no nothing. People will have to travel to get all of this. And that means the lower road again. The community says no, strongly so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor No. Councillor White, did you wish to speak on this one?
Chair, I don't know if I can. I'm a visiting Sheerness ward member this evening because I didn't register to speak on behalf of Minster. I'm happy to talk about this because it's just out of my area. But if you're happy to listen, it's entirely your choice, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor White. Any visiting member is allowed to speak on any application. Please go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, thank you for that clarification. I'd like to back Councillor Nundy's point of view in terms of that this planning committee has heard on a number of occasions that the lower road is actually overburdened, considerably so, with regards to the amount of traffic that uses that. We've also had varying reports of the A249 being overloaded, and inevitably this is the wrong type of housing for this area. This type of housing we see all the time that is either people moving onto the island or landlords picking up relatively cheap housing ready for renting out. Both of these do not suit the local needs of Sheffield. What is needed by far are units that allow local families to stay where their heritage and culture is. And that isn't supported potentially by this planning application. And it's very disappointing to see yet again KCC highways are not supporting the obvious difference between reality and what is actually seen in their reports for traffic.
Thank you, Councillor White. And what happens for the members of the public, what happens is that I, as the chair, move the officer recommendations. It does not indicate how I will vote, but it's a procedural requirement. So I move the officer recommendation. Take questions now or before? Okay, we have a question. Councillor Palmer, Chris.
Yeah, I've got one question, which is the 106 money for this development. Why is it going to Highstead and Borden and not to the school that is already on the island, which is obviously struggling because many pupils travel from the island to schools in Sittingbourne. So the school obviously needs more places. And due to the cutbacks in transport by KCC, it's clear that the new development is going to have more pupils, and if they can't get into the school in Sheppey and the transport's been cut, they're obviously going to be taken to schools in Sittingbourne by parents in cars, which again is going to add to the congestion and the air pollution. Thank you.
Okay, I am going to move the recommendation so that we can ask questions and debate. When I move it, I move it with the amendment condition 16 as tabled on your updated table. And is there a condition with 15% affordable housing in there?
That would be part of the section 106.
Right, so that is
That would be
incorporated within that.
yeah.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Right, there's no second. Oh, go on, thanks, Councillor Hunt. It's really going to be trouble.
Yeah, happy to second.
In that case, can you answer the question that was asked? Yes.
I can't give a detailed answer other than to say that KCC as the education provider are the ones that advise us where the money needs to be spent.
If I could perhaps
Yeah,
add
if
to
you
that
can
as well.
wait until you called in.
Oh.
I had Cheryl's asked to come in.
Okay.
Yes, so when the applications are consulted on, they're consulted with all the statutory consultees and other required consultees, and they will express their views, comments on the application, and they will set out any conditions they feel are necessary, and officers will then assess those to determine whether or not they are conditions that meet the tests and can be applied to the application. And they will also set out the need for any funding that they feel is necessary to meet the demands of the planning application. So you'll be aware from your planning training that the way that you mitigate some of the harms of the planning application is either by controlling it through condition or through a section 106 planning obligation. The officers are guided by what KCC asked for. Case laws held that unless you've got very good reason to go against the views of that statutory consultee, you need to go along with it. You need good evidence to support a contrary view. KCC have a number of commissioning plans that set out a rolling programme of works, usually over a period of about 5 years. And those will detail, based on data that they have from population growth estimates and local plan estimates and so forth, where that growth is likely to occur. And they will use that to assess where the need is in terms of each of those different types of infrastructure or service. And those costs are then worked out through those
I did go to the site meeting and I had great concerns about the visibility on that road. I know I'm not here really to make a comment about KCC as such, but I'd have some concerns with the answer KCC's given. So I will stress the debate before I make my final mind up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Winkler. Councillor Thompson.
I just wondered, is there any information regarding groundwater? Because it comes up as being vulnerable, highly vulnerable site. So I just wondered if there's any information.
Anybody care to offer an opinion on that?
Just to say that KCC Flood and Drainage Department, as the lead local flood authority, have looked at the application and have considered it, and they are happy with that. There are conditions included in the proposed set out in the report to require further details of the sustainable drainage scheme to be submitted at a later date with the reserved matters should the application be approved.
Sorry, going back again, but is that covered? Because we've had it before that they've not actually looked at the groundwater rather than drainage. So I just wondered if
the Environment Agency have also looked at it and they're looking at that, and yeah, they've raised an objection.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, anybody else wish to speak on this? Councillor Palmer Richard.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, when you read this, and I've read the 9th of March minutes report, and I've looked at this report, and I think it all looked quite hunky-dory until you get to reality. I used to work out as a paramedic from Queenborough Ambulance Station. I'm quite familiar with that stretch of road. Councillor Nundy was slightly wrong. It doesn't just get snowed up when there's an accident. It quite often happens, most of the time, that it's a struggle to get out to that side of the area. I look at the requirement to approve all sustainable development, and I've looked at this, and on the social objectives, I feel it fails on the health requirements. I feel it's on highway safety. It doesn't succeed. I think the education, you're just burdening an area which has poor education with a problem, and I think KCC needs to sort it out. And the roads in that area are terrible. And KCC have made a statement that they're not likely to improve any of the infrastructure. So all we're doing is building and making a more unsustainable development, in my view. So if the NPPF says we will support all sustainable development, I feel this committee needs to look at this and say, well, if it's unsustainable, we can't support it. I think it's unsustainable in several areas which outweigh the tilted balance, in my view. Thank you.
Hands are now popping up. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In my opinion, as a local councillor of some years, I do not believe that the infrastructure on the island is adequate for what is currently there, let alone one more dwelling, be it health, education, roads, drainage, you name it, and I'll say it's not good enough. However, my local knowledge counts for nothing against the professionals at the statutory consultees. If the highways people say there isn't a problem, there isn't a problem. Never mind, I know better, because my view does not count. And that is what we are up against on these applications. We are governed by the government and the rules that they put in place. And all we can do is to try and mitigate with 106s, because the times I have sat in this chamber over many, many years on highways, we all know there's a highways problem here, 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 here. And the highways people who did used to come used to sit and say, no, not a problem. And theirs is the view that counts, not mine. So, you know, no matter what we think of this application and others, if the statutory consultees do not back you up with their professional opinions, then you have no choice but to accept the recommendations. Doesn't mean to say we're happy with it, doesn't necessarily mean we agree it. But we can sit here time in, time out and refuse. It goes to appeal and the developer gets it. Now we can feel really good because we've supported local people, but you're getting it anyway. Why not get something out of it? And why don't we be honest with our residents and try and explain to them how the planning system works, which is it's not your opinion and your local knowledge that counts, it's the professionals who do pop down now and again and do inspections, but they don't know it like you and me know it. The same, our view counts for nothing. Our local opinion and experience counts for nothing. So there we go. The officers are recommending approval on planning grounds, and I think that there is no choice but to accept that recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Marchington.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Most of the comments have already gone on. I'm pleased to see, to start with, that we've got the 15% affordable housing, because they didn't want to give us anything on Sheffield, really, because we have lower price of increase between the cost of the land to the saleable price versus by we don't get affordable housing. I disagree completely with KTC about the lower road. I think any dramatic change on commuter usage time is going to cause delays. And we've looked at the traffic that gets involved with the holiday camps, but they tend to avoid the rush hour traffic. They come in either mid-evening or late mid-morning. So that's the only way the road can work, is because they spread themselves. They already know that. So suddenly having a lot of extra people that have got to come off the island, there's no work on the island, and there's certainly no skilled work on the island, and so they have got to travel off. So you're looking at one, possibly two vehicles per house, and got to go all the way on, about 9 miles each way to get off the island. I disagree with them there. I think the push to put housing up is a government issue, and it's high time this has been looked at, because the loss of our land to us is got to have a government rethink on this. It really has. So I think there's definitely a lack of infrastructure. The schooling we've talked about, the jobs we've talked about, and I can't see anything why I could agree with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marchington. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to come back to the reality of what Councillor Harrison was picking up on, because it's not just a matter of having to accept what the statutory consultees say. It's a matter of the overall pressure that we are put under by the government and the NPPF and the inspectorate. And we know, if we are honest about this, that we cannot oppose a development unless there are very clear planning reasons to do so. And our officers are saying to us very loud and clear that there are not planning reasons that we can put forward that would stand up if it's appealed and goes to the inspectorate. I have huge sympathy with Eastchurch and the overall eastern end of Sheppey. It's a long way to get off the island, and there are all kinds of infrastructure problems. But the same applies across the whole of the borough, from Newington in the west to not quite Faversham, Ospringe in the east. the road system is entirely inadequate. Most of it is over polluted. Some of it grossly over polluted. It is top flight arable land which is being built on, and still we cannot prevent it. And so I regret to say that I think we have no alternative but to accept this unless a member can pick up a clear and objective planning reason to turn it down. And as Councillor Harrison said, saying we don't agree with KCC is not an adequate planning reason to turn it down. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Speed for your maiden speech.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Firstly, I note from the table that update that the Parish Council has expressed concern that there was a site visit, and since that time there's been a change of committee, so many members will be voting tonight without the benefit of that site visit, which I think is suboptimal as a situation, but to some extent mitigated by the presentation from the officer, for which I thank her. I note the Parish Council object to this application, so I'm rather surprised that they're not here this evening. I think if Parish Councils object to planning applications, they should send a representative to this committee too, but they haven't spoken. Looking at the application itself, the site is located outside the defined boundary of Eastchurch, so it's in an open countryside setting. So the application would appear to contravene policy DM24 of the local plan, which is all about conserving and enhancing valued landscapes. It also contravenes policy DM31 because agricultural land is because it's agricultural land that's not allocated for development in the local plan. Then looking at policy ST4, that states that the settlement allocation for Eastchurch is 15 dwellings. Now, this allocation has already been exceeded by the existing permitted development for 15 houses north of High Street, Eastchurch, plus various windfall sites that have been permitted since. So, in my view, it doesn't comply with policy ST4 either. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Speed. Councillor Booth.
Thank you, Chairman. Got a couple of questions and some commentary, if you'll bear with me. Can I just ask a question? It's relative, Chairman. Can we have a show of hands as to all members that are here today that have not visited the site, please?
Yeah, who has? Yeah, I'm happy to take that. Can any committee member who hasn't visited the site please indicate?
Thank you, Chair. That's appreciated. It will come to light why. Eastchurch is the sole remaining village on the Isle of Sheppey. Its close-knit community is tightly and fiercely respectful of its parish, its history, and the settings of Eastchurch. Split into two main areas, there is Eastchurch Village and a location called Kingsborough. The Kingsborough development is approximately 20 years old. Eastchurch, as you will find out in a moment, dates back significantly longer. It's predominantly farmland for agricultural use. Sheppey has a long and historic link with agriculture in Swale and is locally a core employer. The natural world on Eastchurch is unique, Mr. Chairman. The second largest resident population of marsh harriers in Britain, together with a large population of static owls, that is into Eastchurch. All of these birds utilise the corridor that we are talking about as hunting ground. Any development, I suggest, on this land would have a dramatic effect on the bird life. Cumulatively, The bulk and extent of the outline application would, in my opinion, result in a harsh intrusion into the pleasant, verdant locality. I'm sure officers will be very familiar with that phrase. This, I suggest, would fail to reflect the character and appearance of the site or improve the setting. That's another key word, improve. The NPPF is mentioned in the report, as you've all read, so I'm going to refer to some of those commentaries relating to the NPPF. Firstly, infrastructure. This is NPPF 130. The proposed development is not, in my opinion, sympathetic to the local character or history, including the built environment and landscape setting. Our highways provider, as has already been said, has stated there will be no improvements to the road network on Sheppey. It does go further, and I know, Mr. Chairman, you'll be familiar with that. That's not just Sheppey, that's Kent. So it's a massive issue. But I'm only interested in this application, Chairman, and that is for Eastchurch. I'm really interested that highways officers have not visited the site and performed what we would expect to be a road traffic survey. And I understand the commentary with regards to COVID. Respectfully, COVID is finished. We are under no obligations of COVID at all. So I don't know why it's not being done. Again, I'd like to give information, Chairman, and I'm happy to share that. Currently, the traffic model for Eastchurch and the lower road is split into two. It's the A2500 and the B2231. Some say the A reference has a real meaning for it. I challenge that. Currently, the traffic count along that part of the road is between 10 and 11,000 vehicle movements per day. Per day, members. Seriously. Another 63 houses would give rise, you can do the maths, to 567 vehicle movements per day in addition. It roughly equates to 3 per house and a journey per vehicle. That's a significant impact, I would suggest, on the road network. A question which you can answer once I finish, please. I don't believe the access onto the A2500 has been agreed. Don't believe that to be the case. So that's hopefully an answer we can get afterwards, Chairman. The offer to supporting infrastructure, as mentioned in the report, goes as far as 2 items, members. One is moving a bus stop. It's already been suggested we are lacking in buses. The second is planting of trees. Silence prevails. If that is the extent of mitigation, that's a very deep question. I'm nearly there. We need to recognise, Mr. Chairman, that this undeveloped land performs vital functions, including use for agriculture, wildlife protection, a visual amenity, I'll come on to, and a settlement gap of importance. I'll now speak about the countryside gap. NPPF paragraph 170, recognising the intrinsic character and beauty of the countryside. That's what it says. Currently, there exists an important separation, evidenced by physical and visual means. It separates Eastchurch to Kingsborough. There is a genuine fear, Mr. Chairman, that by encroaching on that gap, there will be a coalescence between Eastchurch, the village, and Kingsborough, contrary to the protection as described in the NPPF. Conserving and enhancing is another item, NPPF 189. This is where you're going to like this, Mr. Chairman. Heritage assets,
from site and buildings of local historic value and are internationally recognised to be of outstanding individual character. Any guesses how old the church is in Eastchurch? I'll tell you, it dates back to 1431. So even older than you and me, Mr. Chairman. Eastchurch Church is a beacon on the island. This outline development will obscure the vision of the church from some key vantage points, particularly following the Eastchurch Road from Kingsborough development. I would suggest demonstrably harming the intrinsic character and visual beauty. We've heard beauty before this evening, Chairman. Also, I suggest the outline permission or the outline application does not respect National Design Guide nor National Model Design codes on both these issues. The NPPF states it is desirable to maintain the area's prevailing character and setting. Members, I put it to you. I suggest this would again cause demonstrable harm to the character and the setting of the application. Finally, you'll be pleased. We've heard lots of commentary with regards to the 5-year planning supply, housing supply. In decision making, Chairman, and again, officers will know this, if an authority cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, including any appropriate buffer, the presumption in favour of sustainable development will apply. That's paragraph 11D of the NPPF. And again, I reference the Swale DM19 policy. The word I'm looking at is sustainable. Now, I challenge sustainable is not, in this case, because it's an inappropriate location. There is zero infrastructure to support this development. It is an encroachment into the countryside gap. There is inadequate provision on highways, and that's demonstrated, Mr. Chairman, through highways not actually visiting the site. I suggest that the report they've gone by, the national report, is not outweighed in this instance. There is insufficient weight to highways acceptable by officers. There is no report. I conclude there will be demonstrable harm to the character and appearance of the area. Mr. Chairman, I will be opposing, strangely, the officer's recommendations because factually, we should refuse these on all of those items as described. And as the last line, things we learn over many years, and there's people in this arena that have got considerable experience on planning. One thing that is absolutely evident is where communication between officers and the applicant is healthy and engaging, you have very few conditions. Members, you're looking at 35 conditions on an outline planning application. I rest my case. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Booth. Can we just have confirmation on the access to the lower road question?
The access isn't approved because it's part of this current application. So what you're considering tonight is the principle of the development, so not how it's shown laid out. So the principle of the site being used for residential purposes and the access as shown on the detailed plan of the access. In terms of what's been accepted is KCC Highways have agreed that that access is safe in that location to enter and exit the site. So it isn't approved in terms of any planning permission being granted. If you choose to grant the outline tonight, then it would be approved as part of this application.
Councillor Booth, if you'd like to come back.
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. I do appreciate the allowance to respond. I would challenge, as I'm sure other members in here would challenge Kent County Council Highways on that description of a safe access onto that road. I'm very aware of the terminology, and I've not used it, of dangerous road, which clearly is not a dangerous road. However, to put that junction where they've suggested on that map. I know it's only outlined. I respect that, Carly, I really do. However, I'm not prepared to support an application just on that fact. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Anybody else? Okay, it seems an apt moment for me to remind members, I will from this meeting be asking when members vote against an officer recommendation, and that is the majority position. I will be asking that members can submit to myself and officers reasons why they voted against the officer recommendation. This is to ensure that the reasons are encapsulated within the responses. Councillor Palmer.
Can I call for a recorded vote, Chair, please?
Seconded, Chairman.
Yep, I think we need 5, but yeah, we all agree to that. Yeah. Councillor, an insult, Simon. Your expertise.
Thank you, Chairman. Just wanted to come back on points raised regarding the church and the impact on the church. I have been out to look at the site. I've walked around, and I had some concerns about this when I first saw the application. That because of the sort of secluded nature of the setting of the church within the sort of treed area, and also because of the topography around the church, my view is that there wouldn't be any significant impact on its setting because of the strong treed setting of the church, which separates the development from it. Yes, you may be able to see some housing in the forefront of long distance views of the church, where you can just about see the tower of the church poking above the treetop. But those views are going to be quite long distance, and any level of harm would be very, very, very low. Close-up views of the church are not possible from the sort of western end of the high street, close to the roundabout junction, in part due to the sort of change in levels. The application site is lower than the church. So I very much appreciate the concerns raised, but I don't think there's a legitimate heritage reason for refusal here if members are inclined to want to refuse the application. Thank you.
Any more? Okay, we'll take a recorded vote. Tony Watson. Yeah, I couldn't see that name either. Karen Watson.
Sorry, Chairman, against.
Councillor Vowles.
Against.
Councillor Thompson.
Did you want us to give a reason now? Just voting, sorry. Against.
Councillor Palmer. Richard.
Okay, against.
And the other one was Councillor Chris Palmer. Councillor Speed.
Against.
Councillor Miller.
Against.
Councillor today. Claire Martin.
Against.
Councillor Marchington.
Against.
Councillor Hunt.
For.
Councillor Henderson. Councillor Hall.
Thank you.
Councillor Golding.
For.
Councillor Harrison. Councillor Booth.
Against.
And I'm against. That's 4-4. Sorry, you Tony Watson.
No,
Councillor Winklis.
You should know I'm Councillor Winklis.
Yes.
I'm against.
There's something about 4-4. 12 against and 1 abstention. So that motion is lost. We'll have a alternative motion. Councillor Palmer Richard.
I propose that we reject this application on the grounds of it doesn't comply with paragraph 8B of the NPPF and all the other paragraphs that Councillor Booth said, 130 and 170, and it will lead to urbanisation of the countryside. Thank you.
Councillor Booth.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to add to that for officers' ease of understanding, respectfully. I would suggest there is an encroachment into the countryside gap. I would suggest there is demonstrable harm to the character and appearance of the area. There is insufficient weight to highways that is acceptable by members. And I echo the commentary made earlier about let's all object against highways because they're the statutory. I'm sorry, Chairman, we're here to make a decision, and that's not to just bow under the pressure of Kent County Council wearing one particular hat this evening, Chairman. Commentary was made on MPPF, paragraph 170, paragraph 189, paragraph 130, to name but those. I've got a swell policy number as well. Where did I write that down? DM19, and I think Julian had some additional ones. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Henderson.
Could I just pick up so that I understand what's being said here? Countryside gap has been mentioned several times and now been put in as a reason for rejection. My understanding is the countryside gap is a very specific being. Is there in fact a countryside gap as defined in that location?
Confirmation.
Thank you. No, there isn't a countryside gap. We could refer to just the countryside. And sorry, can I just also clarify? I think you might be looking at an old version of the NPPF because 170, it's 174 that relates to what you're.
I'm happy to go 174.
Yeah. So can I just 170, 189 and 130. So 170 is now 174. Yeah. Okay.
Chairman, I'm happy to come back and kind of add some spice to the countryside gap. My wording throughout the when I was allowed to speak was there is a genuine fear that by encroaching on the gap, there will be coalescence of the village and Kingsborough. That's my point, and I think there is good merit in the NPPF to support the coalescence or the going against coalescence of those two locations. Thank you.
There is not a defined
Charlie.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I think we can draft some reasons for refusal around the urbanisation, but I would prefer not to mention gap, but into the country, the open countryside and the character and the feel of it being a countryside and the coalescence side of things.
As always, I bow to officer knowledge, Chairman.
Okay, whilst I don't think there should be masses of buildings that impact on Cowstead Corner, how is it proposed that we evidence this in an appeal?
Mr. Chairman, I'm concerned you're even considering an appeal at this stage. Planning training always suggests that we should not be mindful of that. The financial repercussions. We are here to make a decision based on what we believe are fundamental grounds for refusal or approval.
It's not about the finance, it's about the argument we were able to put forward.
Yeah, I understand.
Carly? Kerry?
No, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come in and just say that members are entitled to have the merit of the scheme differently to that of officers, and the concerns in relation to countryside gap could potentially be argued at appeal. However, I would urge caution in terms of including the highways impact, because any decisions that we make as a committee need to be based on the evidence before us. At this stage, KCC Highways have not objected, and we should only be going against the advice of statutory consultees where there's compelling reasons to do so. And in the absence of evidence, we could be at risk of costs. Thank you, Chair.
Chairman, again, sorry to interrupt.
No, all I was going to say, it isn't about costs. We, as Councillor Booth had said, and I imagine we're going to say again, but it is about being able to put a reasoned argument forward. We can't just say highways, we don't agree with KCC highways. We don't, we think there's too much traffic along there. Have we got evidence that we can use to put forward in our reasons for refusal, other than just highways? Councillor Palmer Richard.
I mean, it's quite correct that you're saying that the highways are a statutory consultee, but higher courts have often accepted that councillors with local knowledge are making decisions based on their local knowledge. Now, I can't give you chapter and verse and case law, but I could probably send half a dozen through tomorrow. But I'm sure that the legal officer will confirm that decisions that members make tonight, they are entitled to use their planning judgment and their experience and knowledge of the local area. Now, one way to defend that would be, I mean, I hope they wouldn't appeal. I hope they would look at the sentiments this evening. But if the council was so minded, they could engage a private planning consultant to do a review on it, to strengthen their argument at appeal, should it go that far. Thank you.
Councillor Booth.
Thanks, Chairman. There will be case history going back to the Barton Hill Drive development. And there was a traffic count done for that development some years ago. Again, I take the stance. I object to KCC Highways giving an empirical data analysis of traffic along that route. Again, they've used the term COVID. Mr. Chairman, I can tell you how many cars travelled along there during COVID, particularly in those first few weeks, and it rhymes with zero. So, let's be careful here. I don't think we should be afraid of challenging these people, seriously. Thank you.
Right, I mean, you could suggest that we use the traffic modelling, our own traffic modelling, for the. Yeah, but that's good, was it? Yeah. No, for the local plan submission, which indicated it. Councillor, Mr. Burns.
Yeah, thanks. Just because Barton Hill Drive has been mentioned, and I was the case officer on Barton Hill Drive, I'd like to advise members that that went to appeal. We refused that on a number of grounds, including technical highways grounds. We employed somebody to advance those grounds at the appeal. We weren't successful, and we had a significant award of costs against us. When you are dealing with matters like highway impacts, they are generally based on quite technical details. When you're looking at something like a countryside impact, a visual impact, there's some more subjectivity there. The council, if the council's going to refuse this application on highways grounds, we really need to have that backed up with technical detail. It's for members to decide what they want to refuse the application on, but I would strongly advise them that we don't have that technical detail. I haven't heard any technical detail given, and that we would be exposing ourselves to a significant risk of costs. Thank you.
Cheryl?
Chairman, I just wanted to come in just to make something clear for the committee if they're not completely au fait with the NPPF. We are in a situation, you've heard already, where we don't have a 5-year land supply. So we're in a position that's affectionately known as the tilted balance. Paragraph 11D of the NPPF applies. And that says that where you have sustainable development, you should be approving it without delay unless the harms significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. That's what it says. So you've got in your report a list of benefits. One of them's the additional 15% affordable housing above and beyond what is required by your local plan. but it's clear that you also feel there are a number of harms. So when we're formulating the reason for refusal, you just need to be very clear in your wording so that we can make sure that those harms you are identifying do significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of the scheme, because that will put you in a better position if this does end up at appeal. Thank you.
Councillor Palmer was the original proposal of the motion. Are you happy to accept that wording into your reasons for refusal?
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, thank you.
Good.
Yeah, that'd be fine, thank you.
Councillor Booth.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, I'm minded and respectful. Affordable housing, it's one of those misnomers. There's no real definition. The NPPF tries to give a definition, but it's absolutely meaningless, as I'm sure everybody in here that's got planning experience will know. The question was asked at the site meeting, we need more affordable housing. I think it's a token gesture. I think the applicant is doing that under pressure, respectfully. The applicant's not here tonight. Yeah, I would have asked him the question. But I think we just need to be careful, Chairman, on balancing what is affordable housing. We've heard earlier this evening that parts of the island and parts of Swale in a whole are extraordinarily challenged financially, I'll put it that way. And I don't think we can just tar over the eastern part of Sheppey and say everybody there is hard up and poor and desperate for affordable housing. That's not reality. That is not the case. Seriously, it isn't. And I do agree that the observations that have been made by a number of members do outweigh the absence of the 5-year supply, because it does state, and I read again, sustainable development. And I think everything that's been suggested this evening says that it is not a sustainable development. What is the benefit of 63 houses in Eastchurch? I know we're going over old ground, Chairman, but I think it's worthwhile stating what is the benefit. There isn't. There is nothing at all for those 63 households in Eastchurch. There are no shops. There's no cycling. There's no walk. Well, it's walking, but getting outside is just going to be a no-no. I don't see that as sustainable, and I think that's the key item here. Thank you.
Just ask the officer, the decision due date was the 28th of December 21. A bit without date. The publicity expiry date was the 1st of May 23. What publicity was that?
I think that's in relation to further amendments. I can't remember exactly what they were. I would have to look it up on the system, but there were some further amendments that were submitted and then we reconsulted.
So that would mean they cannot, at this, given that they've put in amendments, they couldn't go for non-determination yet, or could they?
I don't think they can go through non-determination because there's not a planning extension agreement at this moment in time. So yeah, because there's no planning extension agreement in place, it is out of time and they can't currently go for non-determination. Yeah, because they're over the 6-month period.
So if we were to ask for a independent traffic survey, if the committee wanted that, defer it to have a independent traffic report done, they wouldn't be able to just go for non-determination in the meantime.
No, that's correct. I was just clarifying in terms of who pays for that.
I think we would have to, if this committee decided that's what it wanted to do. It's just an option for this committee. If they want to get traffic evidence, it would be an option, but as I say, it would have to come from this council, around £3,000. So, Councillor Booth.
Chairman, may I suggest, I mean, this is in the behest of KCC Highways. I would suggest that they are the people that have not put forward anything than a one line. We found no reasons. They're the people that have not given supporting evidence. They don't even know what the traffic movements are. I get excited, Mr. Chairman, because this is an extremely important application to the future proofing of Sheppey. I make no bones about that. And I think, should negotiations be had in that particular area, I would like to think a reasonable compromise could be had.
Okay, I didn't get followed up with a proposal, so Councillor Palmer, Richard.
Well, I was going to say, are you looking there for a proposal that we defer the meeting to request the highways report from KCC? Are you suggesting that we defer this meeting until there's a highways report from KCC? Or we commission one if KCC don't want to?
There is an existing proposal on the table. Are you withdrawing that? That can be discussed. This can be discussed. You can always put it back.
That was my next question. If I withdraw, okay, I'll withdraw it, but it might come back depending how on the outcome. Thank you.
Okay. Does a seconder for that proposal? Councillor Booth.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'm happy for the officers to go back to the statutory consultee, as in KCC Highways, and put that to them, as in this committee requests a traffic count and some further detailed explanation with regards to traffic flow along the lower road directly affecting this outline application.
Cheryl.
With respect to Councillor Booth, that is information that should be provided by the applicant, and that should then be provided to KCC to assess and comment on. It's not for KCC just to arbitrarily go out and start assessing traffic at the behest of this committee.
So through the applicant then, Chairman.
So we could ask the applicant to provide it in order that his application can be determined. Right, the applicant has already provided a traffic assessment which has been assessed by KCC, I'm being told.
Then I beg that the proposer sticks with his proposal, which I'm happy to second.
Okay. Well, this is the new proposal, the original proposal. Well, we do it. Sorry, what did you propose, Councillor Palmer, again?
Secondly, that the second proposal was that we commission a highways report.
Agreed.
To counter it.
Okay, so that's the proposal on the table. We commission a highways report to look at the issues that we have put forward on this. It's been proposed by Councillor Palmer Richard, seconded by Councillor Booth. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I just be a bit clear here? We've heard about 7 impassioned arguments from Councillor Booth, but we are supposed to be debating and giving reasons for turning this application down. And I certainly have not followed any halfway sensible, specific reasons for turning it down. We appear to be looking at a whole variety of possibilities to give us highways information. I suppose I'm asking a question rather than making a proposal. Is that the major reason we are looking at to turn this application down? In which case, if we're seeking a highways report, then we can't possibly turn it down before we get that highways report.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. I think the position is there are a number of reasons councillors might turn it down, including the impact on the countryside, character and setting, and various paragraphs of the NPPF. It is whether or not the highways is an additional reason to turn it down or not. If that additional reason to turn it down is to be included, do we want to get, basically, if we want to include it, we need evidence. The one way of getting evidence is to commission an independent traffic report. So we propose this, we defer until we get that traffic report. If that traffic report supports what members are saying, that can be part of the reason for refusal. If it doesn't, then there are other reasons for refusal already on the table, but we can then revisit at that meeting.
Well, could somebody make such a proposal, we can then vote on it?
That has been done. That has been done. Councillor Palmer proposed that we get the traffic report. It's been seconded by Councillor Booth and Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's probably a mere detail, and you know, you did say well, it's only £3,000. Well, you said only 3,000. It's only £3,000. £3,000 to me is a lot of money. Have we got a budget for this? You know, mere detail, I know. But if we haven't got the money in the budget, what are we going to use? Shirt buns?
We also haven't got a budget for appeals. Councillor Hunt.
Thanks. I was going to say exactly the same thing about money. I mean, we're going to hear time and time again we don't agree with highways, and time again we'll be looking at turning something down and needing the evidence. How many applications are we going to have that's going to be £3,000 with no budget and nowhere to go with it? If we keep doing that, we're just going to be spending out money. You're probably going to get a traffic consultant report back saying that there is no issue and KCC are correct. We're then going to go down the route of if you still want to refuse it, there'll still be the same reasons that have been talked about with refusing it for outside of the built up boundary. And I would say that just wasting time doing anything to do with highways. And if you really want to go and refuse it, come up with the reasons that you've already said and go along that route, because that's the safest route if you're in the field.
We wouldn't want you writing your articles on LinkedIn about it, would we? Councillor Booth.
I'm
Yeah.
getting ready for it.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'm minded that there are, in the opinion of the committee, as already been voted on, some solid reasons for refusal, grounds for refusal. I'm quite content to enter battle with highways. As has already been mentioned this evening, highways and KCC highways have made a statement that no, I repeat, no enhancements to infrastructure are going to happen. There is not the money for it. So at what point, Mr. Chairman, are KCC highways going to recognise that the impact upon the highway structure as it is today, which is, as we've heard quite eloquently suggested, inefficient for the Isle of Sheppey, at what point is it going to be complete standstill? We are very, very close to that. And that, as Mr. Henderson, Councillor Henderson has said, you know, this borough reaches far and wide. And whilst we're respectful to other parts of the borough, we're not talking about them this evening, we're talking about Eastchurch. So thank you, Chairman.
Okay, we'll take a vote on the proposal that we seek a independent traffic consultant to look at these issues. All those in favour, please indicate. Those against, please indicate. 12. Oh, one. Unvoted. Against. And one abstention. Oh, thank you. Okay, so Councillor Palmer, would you like to resubmit your original reason?
I will resubmit my original proposal.
Councillor Booth, would you like to second that?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman.
Any debate on that? Okay, those in favour, please indicate. Yeah. Would you like to remind us of that, Councillor Palmer?
Yes, I started off by saying it's it's not compliant with paragraph 8 of the NPPF, particularly 8B, particularly on the social aspect, designing open and safe spaces, supporting community health and social care, etc., because of the highlighted point with GPs, the health service, the infrastructure on the island, and the travel for schools. And then there was various other points raised, NPPF 130, 189, 170. I didn't write down the ones Councillor Speed said, and also I mentioned that it was urbanisation of the countryside. And if I've forgotten anything, I'm sure someone will jump in and mention that. Thank you.
Councillor Booth, jump in.
Yeah, the coalescence between Eastchurch Village and Kingsborough is a main item on there.
But do officers feel that they have captured that? Kerry.
Thank you, Chair. I think once again, I'd just like to remind members, particularly in relation to infrastructure around health and schools, we have gone out to the statutory consultees who have raised no objections to the impact on health. So again, we do need to be careful in terms of the reasonableness, in terms of how we take this decision. I would not recommend that they be included as reasons for refusal, that we have instituted the Section 106 contributions to mitigate that harm.
And can I also include the phrase that Cheryl used, which is that on balance, the proposed benefits are not considered to outweigh the harm. Is that what you said? Yeah. If you're happy with that. Okay, if there's no more debate on that, that is the motion before us. And don't forget, anybody who votes against the officer's recommendation, I would ask, sends in writing so that we can capture that. Cheryl.
Apologies, Chair. Can I just check, are we still including within that resolution the infrastructure points? Or is the committee not going forward with that on the basis of the advice from the head of the development manager? Sorry.
A good point. Are we happy to, Councillor Booth?
Yeah, I think we need to be careful, Chairman. I'm respectful to the commentary. Infrastructure is just not highways, is it? Infrastructure covers a lot of things, not just highways. So whilst I'm minded to, as we've agreed, remove the highways issue, infrastructure goes a lot deeper than that.
So a general phrase rather than the specifics. Is that better?
I'm sure officers can do that.
Andy?
Yeah. Are you trying to say that because of the relatively small size of Eastchurch, it doesn't contain the infrastructure to be able to accommodate the development of the size proposed?
No, that's perfect. Yeah. It does not sustain it. It does not have the ability to have that impact upon its current structure. No.
Yeah, I think all we've heard this evening is how Eastchurch and that part of the island just can't sustain any further development. And whether highways is withdrawn, that's fine, but there are other infrastructures that it just doesn't have in place that it can cope with 63 houses or 20, but 63 would just tip it over the balance, in my view. Thank you.
Okay, if we are all understanding what we're voting on, I look forward to a busy inbox in the morning. And those in favour of the proposed. Oh, Councillor Harrison.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, can you actually make it clear? Because I don't think everyone in this chamber understands that if they vote against an officer's recommendation, they have got to email in their reasons individually. That's what you said?
Correct.
Good. Just want to make sure everyone's clear.
Councillor Hunt.
Can I also just clarify that point? Because is it something that you're asking, or is it something that is in the Constitution that I have to do?
It's something that I'm asking. It isn't in the Constitution yet. Andy.
Apologies, I'm not sure whether Cheryl wants to come in on this as well, but I think whilst I appreciate that members emailing in their comments could add clarity to the debate, I think it's essential that what is discussed at the meeting forms the basis of the reason for refusal. What we can't do is have one debate here and then members tomorrow email in and say, oh, actually, I think it's unacceptable for X reason and Y reason, which hasn't been discussed at all. So I think that whilst it might help clarify what specific members have said, it's absolutely crystal clear to me that the refusal has to come from this chamber and for the reasons that have been discussed at this meeting. Thank you.
Yes, and basically you can't add load of reasons tomorrow. Cheryl, did you want to come in on this apparently? You've been lined up for it?
Not only just to confirm what Andy has said, the item that we're debating, at the point a vote is taken and that vote is successful and the chairman concludes that item, that is that item over in terms of debate, discussion, decision. The only thing that would then happen would be that the officers would go away and populate the decision notice itself in the electronic system with that decision and the reasons or the conditions or the amendments that are voted on. That's the only thing that can happen after the decision is made in this chamber. So whilst I understand Councillor Baldock's reasoning for what he's asked for, it's so that we're clear, so that when we're looking at the minutes, we can make sure that we have captured everything. It's absolutely not an opportunity to carry on the discussion on the item. The item discussion will conclude in this chamber at the point the chairman says so, and that vote is taken. So we can't add anything new, but it's also vitally important where decisions go against an officer's recommendation that the members in the chamber who are voting on it are clear as to the reasons. Those reasons need to be picked up and addressed in the minutes. If there is an appeal, they form the basis for the defence of the appeal by officers and the council. If there's a challenge, public law challenge or anything like that, reasons for going against an officer's recommendation might be officers recommend a refusal and the committee opts to approve that decision. Somebody might still want to challenge that. Won't be the applicant, they'll be happy as Larry because they've got their planning permission, but there may be somebody aggrieved by that decision. So those reasons for going against an officer are vitally important. And it's been held up in case law that those are needed to be recorded. So yeah, hopefully that clarifies.
Thank you. And sometimes officers don't quite get what we were saying. There was a case of an appeal a couple of years ago where the officer's reason for refusal wasn't actually the reason that was put forward at the meeting. So yeah, it's to make sure we've got that clarified. Right, I've got loads of people wanting to speak. Yes, Councillor Henderson.
May I ask the head of planning whether she accepts that officers have enough and accurate information from the committee to draft terms of refusal of this, if that is what is agreed?
Joanne.
Thank you. That would be a question for the officers who are tasked with that. If I can pass that on, please.
Well, whoever, yeah.
Yes.
Sorry.
Sorry. Am I okay?
Yeah, please don't engage like that. Councillor Henderson, carry on.
So what I've written down here is the harmful impact to the countryside and the coalescence of the East Church Village and Kingsborough. And then a second reason is that the village of East Church doesn't support the services in the village of East Church do not support the proposal, and therefore it's not sustainable development.
Councillor Speed.
Thank you, Chairman. If I could just reiterate the points I made earlier in terms of the policies of the local plan that I believe this application contravenes, DM24, ST4 and DM31. Thank you.
And we're happy to add back to the reason for refusal? Yep. Right. Those in favour of the reason for refusal, please indicate.
We still in a recorded vote, Chairman.
If you must.
Please. Seconded, someone? Thank you.
Okay. Get the name right this time. Oh, sorry, officer coming in.
Sorry, Chairman, just in respect to the policies that have just been quoted. DM24 is our policy on valued landscapes. So a member suggesting that we want to specifically say impact on countryside and landscape. This is not a designated landscape as such. Doesn't mean it can't be valued, but it's not a designated landscape. It's not. We have 3 tiers of landscape. We have landscapes that aren't designated, landscapes that are locally regarded landscapes, which we call areas of high landscape value, and then we have the AONB, areas of outstanding natural beauty. As I said, this doesn't sit within the designated landscape, but that's policy DM24. I think.
Sorry, can you just clarify? Does DM policy 24 require it to be a designated landscape?
No,
it doesn't.
No. DM31 is actually loss of agricultural land. So our members saying that that's a reason for refusal.
On the balance.
Well, I mean, I don't know, putting Carly on the spot, whether it is actually high quality agricultural land or not.
Grade 3A and 3B, and the council's agricultural advisor has raised no objections to the proposal and doesn't see a reason to object on loss of agricultural land.
Coming back in.
Hang on, let's just clarify that one. So we're happy not to include that one.
Yeah, if the proposer is, then
right, carry on, Andrew.
Yeah, coming back in, our main settlement strategy is policy ST3. That sets out hierarchy of settlements and where development is generally focused, and that takes you from the main settlement that's Sittingbourne all the way down to smaller villages and the open countryside. Eastchurch is regarded as a local rural service centre. So I think as part of the argument that's been advanced about the lack of services and facilities in the village, that policy is relevant.
Agreed. Okay then. I'm going to go for it again. Those in favour of the reasons for refusal, please indicate. Recorded vote. Oh yeah. Right. I'll go from the top this time. I'm for. Councillor Booth. For. Councillor Harrison. Councillor Golding.
Against.
Councillor Hall.
Hold. Certainly.
See Councillor Hall.
Hall.
Certainly hold. I'm abstaining.
Councillor Henderson. Councillor Hunt.
Against.
Councillor Palmer, Chris. Councillor Marchington. Councillor Martin.
For.
Councillor Miller. For. Councillor Speed.
For.
Councillor Palmer, Richard.
For.
Councillor Thompson. For. Councillor Valls.
For.
Councillor Watson.
For.
Councillor Winklis.
For.
Oh, this looks familiar. Okay, that was passed by 12 votes, 4 against and 1 abstention. So that application is refused. Okay. So we go back on the right pages now. Right, item 6 is to consider the attached header planning reports, part 2, 3 and 5. We'll just wait whilst we get out. Okay, we will now consider 2.1, number 22/505735/Rem, land at Manor Farm, Chestnut Street, Borden. Can the planning officer provide a summary and update on the application, please?
Thank you, Chairman. So this application is for reserved matters for 50 dwellings. The matters of appearance, landscaping, layout and scale are being considered.
Sorry, hang on a sec. Councillor Spoon, could you turn your microphone off? You're echoing. Please carry on.
Sorry, it appears that it's not being shared. Just bear with me a second. Here we go. Apologies. So outline planning permission has been granted for up to 50 dwellings on this site with access approved off Chestnut Street. This was approved in December 2019. So the principles accepted and approved. This slide just shows an aerial of the site. Those strange marks are archaeological investigations. So there's a public right of way that cuts across the site from Chestnut Street in this location. You can see that now the sun's moved around, and this connects up with another public right of way that runs along here. Some members are probably familiar with the Wises Lane development site here. And just to sort of locate yourselves, as Key Street roundabout, Chestnut Street there, and Key Street running along here. So turning to the red line application plan. So this is the outline of the site. You can see there's residential properties surrounding on the northern edge and the eastern edge, and there's a large substation here. It's obviously triangular in shape. This is the access that's already been approved outline, and the land slopes in this general direction down from this is the highest part of the site in this corner here, with the lowest in this location here, so it's a significant change in levels. And this is the layout for the 50 dwellings. So you can see again the improved access coming in here, and then the existing landscape buffer to Chestnut Street is outside of the site boundary but sits here. This would be retained. And the green areas show the open spaces. And you can see that there's a circular layout in terms of an estate road with smaller cul-de-sacs coming off to the eastern side. And the majority of the properties front the highway as you go around the site. There are some that are side on here, but they have been designed to have active frontages, so including windows or doors in the side, so that there's some, rather than having blank facades along here, there's what's called an active frontage. And in terms of the boundary treatment along these street scene edges, it's a higher quality of a brick wall rather than a close boarded fence. The layout is such that in terms of its relationship with the surrounding properties, the orientation of the properties, there wouldn't be any harmful impact in terms of the living conditions as far as we're concerned as officers. And in terms of the relationship of the properties within the site as well in relation to each other, we don't consider there to be any harm there. All the properties would be provided with an electric vehicle charging point, and the parking standards have been met. It should be noted that there was a previous reserve matters which is currently at appeal for non-determination. So what I've done is just included this slide here to show you the comparison. So this here is the illustrative master plan that was submitted with the outline application. As we've seen with the previous one, that is just one way of showing how the development can be accommodated on the site. And then we have the reserve matters that is currently at appeal. And then this is the current proposal that we're looking at today. It does appear that this has significantly more landscaping because it's purely because the rear garden areas have been coloured in green, whereas they haven't on these two plans. But just in terms of a comparison, and you'd have read in the report, there is less open space and greenery within this middle one. The two on the outer edges of the slide, they have got more of a comparative amount of open space and usable open space in that regard. Also, this one in the middle showed a little bit of a disconnect in terms of the road layout. So the public right of way was maintained coming through the site and its current configuration and its line, and that would go straight through the site there. But there was an objection to that from officers and from the public right of way officer, because it changed the character of that. You know, you're walking through sort of residential streets rather than countryside location. And so it was suggested that the route of the public right of way comes in via the access here and then across into this area, which you can see has been amended, so it is wider. This layout here in the middle also sort of created this sort of disconnect with properties sort of sited in this location. There's a bit more of a contrived layout, and so the applicant moved back to a layout that was more akin to the initial one that was submitted with the outline application. In terms of this previous one that's at appeal as well, it was considered that these properties were too high in this location. The outline secured that they shouldn't be any more than, I think, 2 stories. It's written in the report, but this has been changed anyway, so it's single story bungalows in this location to reduce the impact on neighbours in this location. And also these properties have been moved away from the boundary, so it's probably difficult to see at this scale, but the properties are in a closer relationship here to the public right of way that runs through in comparison to these ones here. The next slide shows the extent of the landscaping. Landscaping is something we are looking to determine tonight. So previous concerns related to the entrance here, where the public right of way was formerly coming through here. This was a lot narrower and the planting here was less substantial, and it was suggested that sort of larger native species be located at the entrance of the site. Again, as stated, this area is a lot wider, and then moving the development away from the boundary here allows for more landscaping in this location. There was previous concerns with the appeal layout as well, in that the properties in this location were closer to the buffer here in the boundary, and they also had garages to the properties for parking spaces. And it was felt that this would create a quite enclosed rear garden area that might result in pressure to prune the trees and cut them back, or even fell them in some circumstances. So the application's been amended, and what they've done is to change the dwelling types so that they can create more space within the development and move the properties away from the boundary there. And also they're proposing carports which have open sides so that the rear garden areas aren't quite so enclosed. So that's been amended, and from an officer's point of view, again, there's no objection here in relation to this. The next slide is the hard landscaping, again, a component of the landscaping reserve matters. It's quite a simple palette. We've got 2 differing colours of block paving, tarmac roadway around here. And this is considered appropriate because the simple form allows for the soft landscaping and the architecture of the development to be more of the visual focus than sort of an array of different paving and surfaces. So again, we've moved to what the development looks like. So there's a series of sections here that shows street scenes. So this is at the top by the public right of way where the 2 connect, and then moving down to Chestnut Street, and then from the top of the site down towards the residential properties in Key Street. There's quite a number of these, so bear with me, sorry. And then this top one is a street scene along the northern side of the road. Shows the bungalows in the top corner. And this is sort of opposite the island in the middle, if you like. And then the bottom just shows those bungalows to the top, and then moving down to opposite the open space. So this area here. So the next one. There we go. And then the top one, this shows the properties sort of from this first junction here, moving along the sort of central island and opposite the open space there. And then the bottom one is from this junction here, again moving along the central island up to there. I don't know if you can see those sections and whether that helps at all, or whether you just want me to go through these slides. And then this one is the top of the junction. This is from up here, the junction with the parking area to northeast corner, and then down towards here. And then also from this entrance along to the second junction there. So those three on the site there as you come in. And then finally, I think this is from here. So the top one is from this area, from the second junction within the site, along to this part here, and then the bottom two are these two street scenes here. So you'll see from these street scene drawings, I know they're a little bit small, but they're using carports rather than the garages, which again, as I mentioned earlier, was to address the concerns in terms of enclosure. A condition is recommended to ensure that the sides aren't enclosed at a later date. In terms of architecturally, the design is similar to those properties in Dental Close, and no objection is raised in this regard from officers. And in terms of some photographs, so this top one here is looking from the public right of way from Chestnut Street straight up to the where it connects with the other public right of way that runs alongside the Wises Lane development. This is looking from the bottom corner towards the substation, just there, and then standing by the substation, looking back towards the residential properties in Key Street, and then Cherryfields and Dental Close just off the top there. This is the public right-of-way connection at the top of the site where it connects with the public right-of-ways running along here by the Wises Lane development. And then at the bottom corner, looking up towards Cherryfields and Dental Close. And then you can see the fencing depicting the public right-of-way. This again is at the top of the footpath, so looking down towards Chestnut Street and then properties in Key Street there. And then from this one is looking towards properties in Key Street, and then looking up from that same sort of angle towards the properties in Cherryfields and Dental Close. And then this slide just shows what the development site looks like from Chestnut Street, so looking towards the village here. And then this is the access from Chestnut Street into the public right of way, and then looking back towards the roundabout, the junction with the roundabout there. Concerns have been raised in the consultation responses with regard to ecology. A lot of species have been mentioned, but there's particular regard to badgers. KCC Ecology, as the council's advisors, someone got their icon. They have considered the submitted information, but they've also considered the information alongside other ecological reports that have been submitted as part of other developments, and I think the parish council undertook their own survey as well. So they've considered all of the information that's been submitted recently, and they do not object to the proposals, and they've been quite insistent on ensuring that a condition is included in relation to boundary treatments for the plots that are adjacent I don't know where, sorry, I don't know where that feedback's coming from. With the plots adjacent to the eastern boundary, so they've insisted on a condition, and rightly so, with regard to the impact and minimising the risk of badgers accessing the rear gardens of those properties. They're satisfied with the conditions attached to the outline and the suggested conditions set out in this report, that it's sufficient to approve the application. And just to touch on archaeology, because that was a concern raised when considering the application that's appeal. Details have been submitted pursuant to the condition on the outline permission in relation to archaeology. The information is sufficient to discharge the condition. It's just waiting formal write-up and sign-off. And so the application has been considered, it's considered satisfactorily addressed the previous reasons that were raised as concerns, and were drafted as reasons for refusal before the previous application was submitted for appeal, and it is recommended that we approve the application subject to the suggested conditions. Thank you.
Thank you for that comprehensive presentation. Can I ask Mr. John Brindley to speak? Is he not here?
He's online.
The agent?
He's online.
Ah, he's online. Mr. Brindley, are you there? Can you indicate he is? Mr. Brindley, this is the final call. If you are not available, we will continue the meeting.
Hello. Sorry, I did email in to say that I didn't wish to speak anymore.
Joy, thank you. Does any visiting member wish to speak on this? Okay then. I'll move the officer recommendation. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Henderson. There's a couple of points I'd just like to clarify first. The Badger survey is something that's come up quite a lot. The developers survey showed no activity, and then the parish council, to declare, I'm a member of the parish council but took no part in the planning decisions of the parish council. Never do. Now, the parish council commissioned their own Badger survey, which was not allowed, the developers didn't allow them access to the site, so they were only able to access the adjacent footpaths, but the adjacent footpaths made it quite clear there was badger activity. So my question would be, how do we know that there is not a greater deal of badger activity on the site that the developer would not allow the badger survey to go to?
They've submitted their own survey, which has been reviewed by KCC Ecology, but KCC Ecology, being familiar with the area, has also taken account of the Warden and Parish Council survey, as well as what's been submitted pursuant to conditions discharged for Wises Lane as well.
Yeah, my question is, given that the Parish Council survey showed evidence of badger activity that the developers survey didn't, and that the developers wouldn't allow the Parish Council survey to access the development land, how do we know that there is not greater, and KCC have accepted both reports, but how do we know that there is not activity on the site, but the Parish Council survey was not allowed to access? There's a large area of land which could have potential activity, but wasn't in the developers report because they didn't find any. and wouldn't be able to show up in the parish survey because they weren't allowed access. So how do we know the status of that part of land?
All I can say is that the survey has been undertaken and submitted, and that has been undertaken by a professional ecological consultant. So that's their findings, and that's what's been considered by KCC, but alongside the previous submissions in relation to Ward and Parish Council's survey and Wyses Lane, which did demonstrate the activity, particularly along near the footpath by Cherry Hills and Dental Close. So that's what they've based their comments on in terms of KCC's review. And there are state conditions on the outline and the reserve matters to deal with ecology.
Councillor Booth.
Thank you, Chairman. On that point, you'll be aware, Chairman, that there are significant legal repercussions should a developer or a building contractor actually unearth a badger set. So it's not just a case of perhaps it being covered up. I think there are serious legal implications. What I did, Chairman, I went back over the history of this application as tonight's the first time I've seen it. And I'd like to applaud the officers in their detailed approach to the conditioning of this. I think it's reached a pretty kind of hiatus of what is now, I would consider, an excellent application. And I need to reflect back, and Councillor Henderson will be aware of this. In a past life, we worked very hard together to implement some certain wording with regards to localised planting schemes. Can the officers confirm that that's still intact? And I refer specifically to bushes and shrubs of berry-bearing nature to support local wildlife and birds. Apart from that, I'm really happy.
Charlie, or anyone able to answer that question?
Sorry, I'm not familiar with that condition, so I was just asking my colleagues.
If I can, Chair, we had a condition on there, and Councillor Henderson will be aware of that as well, that stated, and we stated it on a number of occasions, that the local planting scheme would include shrubs and bushes of berry-bearing nature to support bird and wildlife.
I think Councillor Henderson had to move it at each and every meeting, actually. Yeah. Councillor Henderson, you want to speak on this?
I'm quite surprised that even now there are planning officers who are not aware of that. It was agreed several years ago, and it relates to soft landscaping for the whole of the development. But in this case, where it's 50 houses, it would relate to each house as well. And it specifically was talking about planting of native species which would improve local biodiversity. It should be in every set of conditions, but where there is on a large scheme like this, an overall environmental and ecological plan, then if that plan is agreed and it meets that requirement, you wouldn't necessarily have to put a separate condition in. That's kind of the background.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I think Carly has some info.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies, it's because you said about berry-bearing. I didn't recognise it when I went through the application. Condition 8 of the outline planning permission does require landscaping to be native species, and that's what's proposed as part of this application and is referred to in the application. So if condition 8 of the outline where it refers to native species, if that's the condition, apologies, I've only been here 7 weeks, so that's maybe why I've not picked up on it. But yeah, I mean, I can read out condition 8 if you want. It's fairly lengthy.
No.
But it's, yeah, I can assure you that requires the native species, and there are native species proposed within the landscape plan.
I'm happy with the native species, but I just need to hear and see. They're very varying, because native species are very varying.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Very varying is not wording which is in the agreed condition for everything. I can't remember the exact wording, but it is soft landscaping which shall be of native species with
Encourage wildlife and biodiversity.
Thank you
It's
very
in there exactly to those words. Yeah.
not very varying.
Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can see no reason whatsoever to go against the recommendations of the officers. I have one concern, using this road pretty regularly lately because of that old malarkey at Stockbury. And that is on what you've shown and on this little map here, it looks like there's, I know it's not that big, it's a bit bigger than that, the access to get onto Chestnut Street. And then on there, you showed all that greenery. Now, having been up and down that road quite a bit lately, my concern is sight lines. And I know you're going to say, but highways say it's okay. Well, highways need to go down there and actually try and drive out on to either way. Well, crossing the flow of traffic, when it's the diversion route, you've got a cat and nails chance you might just sort of go up to what was Stockbury and come back down again. That's how bad it is. But the side that's, if you were going up to Stockbury, the speed of the traffic going along there, I'd say it's quite dangerous coming out. So, I mean, it's not like insurmountable. I'd just say, can we be absolutely clear that there is enough splay and that those green bits are going to be kept of a, never mind this no may thingy, because that's getting quite dangerous. But there is enough, it's low enough for people to actually see and get out safely from an access. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. There is concern on this access simply because KCC there's going to be a new road going down there, which is supposed to be a priority road. And they haven't confirmed whether or not people leaving this development will be able to turn right and join the Key Street roundabout, or if they've got to go down to the new roundabout and come back. And KCC keep being asked this, and they never come forward with any details. So it is for the developer to sort out, but it is going to be a problem. Whichever way it happens, it's going to cause problems, but that's not in this application. Kerry. Charlie?
I was just going to say, obviously, I'll attempt to say that the access has been approved, so that would have shown visibility displays, but there is an approved drawing on the drawings list, which is a visibility displays plan. And then there's also a condition requiring pedestrian visibility as well. So that's okay with KCC Highways. They've confirmed that. So yeah, but the access has already been approved. Thank you.
Councillor Palmer.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have a concern with highways with that new route. But following the statement from KCC, will that new route ever go? But I think having an access there with most of the traffic travelling down from Key Street, because Key Street won't accept traffic on, I think if it allows a right turn, it's going to be very dangerous, and it's not clear in here. I don't think it's clear what KCC have actually accepted. So I do have concerns on highway. I also have concerns of the house had been quite high up, dominating some of the existing houses there. I'm not too sure if that came across well on your setting or I'd like a view on that, because I think there was originally bungalows because of that concern, but they've gone to houses, if that's correct. And I do have concerns with the pattern, but I accept what you say. Thank you.
Do we have photographs from the footpath showing heights or anything?
No, the only photographs I've got are the ones that are shown. The houses were shown on the reserve matters that's at appeal, and this current application has changed so that there's bungalows in the corner. That was the main area of concern. I think Simon went out and looked at this site as well. But that corner by Cherry Fields and Dental Close, they've been changed to bungalows and further set off of the boundary by that public right of way to address concerns that were previously raised. So yeah, they have been lowered, but the previous reserve matters as at appeal, I think they were 2-storey in that location.
Want to come back?
Not on that item, I accept what you're saying there, thank you. But on the highways issue, have KCC actually confirmed or not?
The access is approved as shown, and there's no restrictions as far as I can see in terms of the planning permission, in terms of turning right. So as it stands, people can come out of that development and turn either way.
Can you, as we've talked about bungalows, can we put a condition in that they have to remain as bungalows?
There's a condition removing permitted development rights for upward extensions. It's number 15. So that would restrict upwards development, which would normally be allowed under permitted development.
But they could still apply for it.
Yes, they could still apply for planning permission. Then it's within the council's decision making as to whether they want to approve it or not at that point.
Councillor Winkles.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think overall this is a pretty well designed development. I mean, as I understand, they did go away and listen and made some amendments to it. On this particular case, I think if we was to turn this one down and the developer went to appeal, we would definitely lose. So in my opinion, we have no grounds to refuse this, and I'm happy to back the officers on this one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Winkles. Can I just check 6.22 is the Swale Borough Council footpath officer, and he or she doesn't seem to think that any diversion would be needed, whereas elsewhere 7.14 says that the current proposal shows footpath ZR 117 would be diverted. Don't like that.
I think they, Andy's just telling me I haven't got a footpath officer, but this is what I've got for the system. I think that might be in relation to the previous application, actually, where the one that's at appeal, where the footpath wasn't diverted and it showed to go straight through the site. So whether there's been an issue in terms of scanning, uploading the response to the wrong application, I'm not sure. I suspect that's the case, but Andy's going to jump in.
Andy?
Yeah, thank you. Just to confirm, we don't have a footpaths officer. I strongly suspect that comment is from an amenity group that we have in Swale, which are called something like the Swale Footpath Group. So they are a consultee on applications, but they are not part of the council. It may simply be that they misunderstood the application, or as Kylie said, maybe they had got confused with the previous scheme that's now at appeal. But that's not comments from the Swale Borough Council department.
Okay, it does say December 2022, so I think that's left over from the previous one, which we should avoid in future. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Condition 5, coming back to ecology and biodiversity, there's a whole lot of detail about the ecological enhancements, but I come to the crucial bit at the end. The ecological enhancement measures shall thereafter be retained in accordance with the approved details. And now everybody should know that conditions must be A, necessary, and B, enforceable. What chance do we have of enforcing that condition? Because my long experience with developers on ecology and biodiversity and landscaping is that there are two types of developer. One who is genuinely trying to get a good development, and the other who is dragged kicking and screaming to the very least they can get involved with. And I'm concerned here that it'll be built, that'll be the last we hear of it, and the actual ecological enhancements will not be either implemented or certainly not maintained. How do we ensure that?
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Given this developer refused permission to for Badger survey to be done on the site after their own survey didn't find any activity, and the subsequent one did, there has to be some significant doubts as to the ecological commitment. So how can we ensure that things that we ask for are done?
Well, the mitigation is set out in the stated document, and also the ecological management plan. So what the requirements are stated in those documents. They need to be implemented on the site, and if you don't require the retention within the condition, you can provide them on the site and then remove them again a week later or a day later. So the reason for the retention in the wording of the condition needs to be there. In terms of enforceability, you would use those documents and what's been provided in terms of the information that should be on site and have been implemented, and you would check on site whether if that's the case or not. So if there was concerns and there was an enforcement request, you would go and check it in the normal way. That probably obviously in relation in consultation with KCC Ecology. And then in terms of if there's non-compliance with that, then as with all enforcement cases, you'd need to come to a decision as an authority as to how you intend to pursue that or not.
I would certainly
microphone.
Sorry. I would certainly suggest that everybody who buys a home on that site is given a copy of our conditions and asked to look at them carefully. Thank you.
Cheryl?
Just by way of a comment there for Councillor Henderson, if members are minded to grant this evening, any planning permission that's granted will be noted onto the local land charges register and the planning register, and should be identified in any local land search carried out as part of the sale of the property. And the conveyancer should then draw that to the attention of the resident that, certainly I remember when I bought my house, laughably, it had been built in the mid-80s, I bought it 15 years ago. I was required to go and hunt out the original planning permission for my property for my solicitor. But it will come up as part of the local land charge, as will the existence of the extant section 106 agreement that is linked to the outline planning permission. That will also be noted on the land charges register and come up through local land searches at the point those properties are bought. So they will be drawn to the attention of the existence of any planning permission on the site and any conditions and so on and so forth, and equally any issues that are then put on in terms of restrictive covenants on the land, etc., by the landowner. Thanks.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Andy?
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to add that on the actual outline permission as well, there's a condition 30, which requires a detailed landscape and management plan. And within that, as part of the, it says the landscape plan should incorporate the ecological enhancement measures and include a 5-year rolling management plan with the site, details of habitat monitoring, and when management plan reviews will be carried out.
Can you just explain how providing with badgers there is a requirement to preserve foraging grounds, and yet we have specific policy here that would have steel reinforced concrete gravel boards to minimise the risk of badger access across the gardens? How does that protect foraging grounds?
That's the condition that KCC insisted that should be included to minimise the conflict between, or the potential conflict between the development and badgers.
Yet in Dental Close, the badgers accessing gardens is a usual practice because they go across the gardens to access the fields. So I'm just confused as to why we would be seeking to deny access. Surely I thought the idea was that they should be provided with foraging activities space on the development.
That's KCC's advice. If members consider that they don't want that condition to be included, they can remove it from the permission if it gets granted.
Throw that open. Councillor Henderson.
I think it would be very dangerous to remove that. I appreciate the point you're making, that does at least partly restrict where the badgers can go, but leave land which is accessible to badgers linked through to people's gardens. You are building for a serious problem, because the minute a badger comes into somebody's garden, they simply are not allowed to do anything to prevent it doing that. It would just be unreasonable, however one may wish to help the badgers.
The point being, from the secondary badger survey that was done by the parish council, it's stressed the reliance of the set on being able to access that land, because the other land they've got is also due for development, and so you are effectively enclosing the set with no foraging lands. And I just don't see how that is something that we can be doing. I just thought we needed to provide some access to foraging. But as I'm alone on that.
Forgive me, but that should have come up.
Okay.
It did, and that's why the issues about the badger survey that the developers presented, and then the parish council submitted one, which showed that the developer's survey was wrong. And this has been an ongoing issue for a long time. And the solution is being proposed that they are kept out of this area. But that is down for us to say whether or not we find it acceptable. John.
Thank you, Joe. Just to come in to say that KCC have reviewed both the surveys provided.
The point was, the second survey wasn't able to consider badger activity on the site because the site wasn't allowed to be on the site. so he wasn't allowed to access the site. I just feel that if, we've heard about KCC and their highways issues. This as an ecology response, I just think didn't take on board the issues that were raised in the survey. And we need, we have a duty to wildlife and biodiversity. For those of you who don't know the map, there is a map on page 56. There's always maps now. And you'll see that there's potential there for a set to be completely isolated. And I just think that is something we need to be certain when we're giving permission, but by blockading them out, KCC have given us the right advice. Kerry.
Thank you, Chair. Just to expand on what Mrs. Johnson has said, KCC have reviewed the two surveys, that provided by the developer and that provided by the parish council. And in responding to those surveys, KCC have acknowledged that there is an increase in badger activity. However, notwithstanding that, the mitigation set out by the developer is sufficient to mitigate the badger activity across the site. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So that's down for us to decide. Councillor Thompson?
I'm a bit confused here. But one is, where is the badger say exactly?
Not allowed to say in public, but if you look at your map.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at the map. Yeah, but I don't know, anyway. That was the one. But
I'll put an X on it for you.
Thank you very much. I forgot to say now, but it'll come back to me. Thank you.
Councillor Booth.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I want to go off kilter for a moment. I applaud the green issues, green credentials of solar panels and EV charging. However, I'm a little concerned. Page 52, item 7. Each dwelling shall not be occupied until an electric vehicle charger for that dwelling has been provided in accordance with da 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 da. How is that going to be undertaken? Because as of today, there are 3 different types of EV charging points. So are the residents going to get the choice, or are they going to be told, yeah, we bought 50 of these, that's what you're going to get?
Carl?
We were, yes.
Yes, the electric vehicle charging points will be installed on the properties, and they are needing to meet the requirements that are set out in that condition and in the informative as suggested by KCC Highways.
So do the residents get a choice? That was my question. There are 3 currently available. Do they get the choice?
There's no reason why they can't if the developer chooses to allow that to happen. But yeah, that they may not. They might just install them.
Councillor Thompson.
I was just going to clarify, there's only actually one outlet. We do electric vehicle hire, but it'd just be a type 2 Menegas. It would just, that would be a standard setting. There might be receivers to the car that are different, but they get their own cable. So it's not a problem.
Councillor Palmer. Richard.
Yeah, sorry to go back to the badges. I thought I'd had this settled in my head, but I'm just concerned that KCC looks at something, the developer does their assessment. And if I understood rightly what the officer said was, or what was said, is the Borden Parish Council's survey, they couldn't survey the land fully. So you've had one survey which could look at the land, and one incomplete survey, which KCC have said is fine. I have concerns here that we talk about protecting our living and environment, and yet we haven't looked at it fully by taking both sides and having a good balanced view. So I'm wavering now on because of the attitude of the developer not having an open look at the badger settings, and I think there's a problem there. I'm concerned on the highways, and I've got this other concern, and I think it's starting to tip the balance a bit on how I might consider voting. Thank you.
I don't know, but one option might be that we ask the developer to allow full access to the site for independent survey. If you're not happy with the fact that he did a survey, or they did a survey, and then the parish council did a survey after that, which wasn't able to access the land, but still found more activity than the developer's survey, and I can understand why you might not be happy with that, then maybe an option would be to require an independent survey to actually be able to access the land and see if there's a better activity on the land, but their expert wasn't able to find, but another expert was. Councillor Harrison.
Let me be clear here. We've already had this application in, not as good, in quotes, and it's gone for non-determination because we didn't determine it. So the previous application on layout and all the rest of the stuff could get permission by the inspectorate, okay? So, but what we've got before us is what they probably think, and by the sounds of the officers, a more sympathetic layout that is up to us, that we can say, yeah, that's much better, and you know, if we agree this, then pull your non-determination. So, but we could hang it out. We could hang it out and say we need this and we need that and we need the other. By which case, the one that's gone through for non-determination, which is worse than this layout, could go through. Nobody wins. So let's be a bit realistic here. And actually, you know, look at what is in the best interests of the whole. Not let's drag this out, let's play to the gallery here, play to the gallery there, because I'm kind of losing the will to live here. We're on number 2, the second application, and look at the time. At this rate, and when you say at 5 to 10, I think we can get finished by 1:30, so I'm prepared to suspend standing orders. I should be voting against it because you won't be able to finish it by 10:30, and I'll be going. Thanks.
That's a very good point. I might not ask for an extension. Carl, you want to say something?
I just wanted to respond to Councillor Palmer. In terms of the highways issue, that's already been approved. So you are on sort of soft ground if you want to try and refuse it on highways. In terms of the badger surveys, I just want to point out there were 3. So there was the one that accompanies this application, the Board and Parish Council one, and a survey submitted, I believe, as part of condition and discharge in relation to the Wises Lane development. Now, I'm not saying that that one for the Wises Lane development, they was allowed onto the Manor farm site. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying there's 3 different surveys. The ones carried out by the applicants are carried out by consultants that they've employed to do that survey. So I wouldn't think it's in the interest of a professional ecologist to not carry out a proper survey. But I didn't do the survey. I can't, you know, say for sure that that is the case. But if you're a company and you're offering those services, I don't believe it would be in your interest to not carry out an adequate survey to accompany a planning application.
Okay, I think people might have different opinions on that, depending on whether or not they want chairman developers to keep going on. Can I just clarify on the appeal issue? There's no reason to believe that the appeal will be stopped if this is passed tonight. They can still go ahead with their appeal if they feel that it is actually cheaper for them or easier for them to provide. So tonight's decision will potentially have no bearing whatsoever on the appeal, whether or not they continue with it. Councillor Booth.
Thank you, Chairman. I was going to ask if we can ask for a bit of hush in the public gallery. It's really uncomfortable to sit here and have to make decisions. Keep getting barracking. Sorry.
Please be quiet. Councillor Marchington.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Bringing you back to badgers. I made a note earlier here tonight that when I noticed that they're going to stop badgers entering the gardens. I was like, is there a route that the badgers can traverse around the gardens in the plan? And also could it be put up?
Not going online, I can say that all they can do is follow a time, well, they will be totally ended.
Thank you.
On your map, it's the well,
Yes.
Yeah, that's why I've stopped running.
Andy,
Thank you, Chairman. Just because I haven't said anything about badgers, I'm going to have a say as well. I know we're not able to reveal the location of the badger set for obvious reasons. There is a strip of landscaping within the site that provides some form of access for badgers. Now, whether or not that is adequate is not for me to say because I'm no expert in ecology, but we've obviously received expert advice from our ecologist. The other thing I want to make clear to members is that we've obviously granted outline planning permission for the scheme. So in principle, we have said that this site is capable of accommodating 50 dwellings. If we're going to raise concern or objection about the impact on wildlife, and in particular if we're talking about the issue with badgers, I think members would have to very strongly relate that to the narrow band of reserve matters considerations that they can only consider at this point under this application. So for the benefit of members, of new members, reserve matters can only consider the layout of the development, the scale, the appearance, the landscaping and access. Access has already been granted as part of the outline permission, so that reserve matter has been dealt with. So we are only looking at the layout of the site and how the buildings are going to appear and what scale they're going to be, essentially, and the landscaping. So we can't just object in principle. Now, the most important thing I wanted to say is that on the outline planning permission, which I appreciate members may not have in front of them, there is a condition, condition 18, and that condition requires a method statement for ecological mitigation to be provided for any development takes place, and that's irrespective of us granting these reserve matters here, because you have to basically comply with both the conditions on an outline permission and the conditions on any reserve matters permission as well. And condition 18 requires a method statement for ecological mitigation, including but not limited to reptiles, invertebrates, bats and badgers. And one of the requirements is that detailed reptile and badger surveys are carried out, that the extent and location of proposed works are shown on the maps, and that the mitigation obviously is fit for purpose to support the surveys, the badger surveys, and the extent of any kind of mitigation that's required. Now, I would say that if we grant the reserve matters today, and obviously we're being told by our ecologists that the layout is acceptable in terms of how it relates to badgers, if those surveys are then undertaken, which they're required to do by that condition, and it emerges that, I don't know, there's been a huge increase in the badger population and there needs to be some kind of, more enhanced mitigation in a larger area provided for them, I would say they cannot then comply with condition 18 and get approval for it, and they might find themselves back in a position where they have to come back in with a revised reserve matters application to be able to come up with a layout that does actually take that into account. So I think that the situation is basically covered by that condition on the outline planning permission, condition 18, that requires that information, those surveys, to be undertaken before any development can commence. And if they can't carry out suitable mitigation within the reserve, within the layout of the reserve matters that we're looking at tonight, it could well force them back to the table to come up with a different layout to deal with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. I think that is part of the issue is their surveys are a bit dubious. And how do we condition it to make sure that their future surveys aren't able to find evidence of badgers that everybody else can find evidence of? It's a problem with the condition. I'll also remind that when we had our planning training on the other week, we were told that you can grant outline planning permission, but just because you've granted outline planning permission, the details, reserved matters are still things that you can make decisions on. Just because we've given the outline doesn't mean to say that they can roll in and produce anything. So I've got pretty much, you've spoken, haven't you? So Councillor Henderson, then Councillor Palmer.
I just point out, picking up what Andy's been saying there, that's exactly why I asked the question half an hour ago on condition 5 of this, because before they start building, they have to meet the outline permission. Before the houses can be occupied, they have to meet the additional condition 5 of this application, which again says that they have to do the planning and they have to make it work. I really think that to be debating changing something which has been discussed by our officers and county officers and discussed with the applicant, we are getting to a stage where we're saying, do we actually need any professional planning officers? Let's deal with every planning application here in committee and get the applicants marching through. It would be farcical. And I suggest that we really need to move on from considering any change relating to that, particularly when we're now dealing with information which the chairman has provided to one member of the committee, but not to the other 15.
I'm happy for anyone else to come up and I'll mark their mouth. Councillor Palmer, then Councillor Thompson.
I did ask to speak earlier when Carly was highlighting some things, and I accept the points on the highways, thank you. However, I mean, I've worked in the medical field and I can put 6 doctors in a room and come up with 12 different diagnoses. And I think that's the problem with experts. You sometimes don't get the full answers or they have conflicting views. And that's why I think it's so important, because this is important for the wildlife, for the badgers. I think it's important that Borden Parish Council, if they're so willing, should be asked to do that survey, and hopefully the developer would go for that. So what I'd like to propose is a deferment until such time as there's been an independent survey on the badgers. Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
Is there a seconder for that? There's a seconder. Does anybody wish to speak to that? The proposal is that this is deferred until a independent survey is done on the site that's allowed full access. And if I presume if the developer doesn't allow full access. Kerry?
I think we just need to come back to what our statutory consultees are advising us here. Our statutory consultees are KCC Ecology, and they are advising that the surveys that are being submitted are sufficient and that they've taken into account both the parish council survey and that provided by the applicant. So again, we need to carefully consider that intake in this decision. And also, if we were to undertake the independent survey, we'd have to be paying for it ourselves, like the highways one. And again, we wouldn't have the budget for that. Thank you.
Councillor Palmer?
Yeah, I accept what you're saying, but what you're saying is KCC made a decision based on 1.5 surveys, because if you can't complete the full survey, of the area, then how can KCC look at it in a balanced and approach way? So I actually give that little weight. Thank you.
Kerry?
Thank you. I think even if we were to get to a point where it was decided we wanted to undertake an independent survey, we still couldn't insist that we would be able to get access to the land because it is private property, but I'm happy to be corrected by legal.
That access to land, it's by agreement. You can't just trespass onto somebody's land to carry out a survey. You would need to get the developer's permission.
And I guess the answer to that would be that we would require that confirmation, but it is that confirmation in order to give permission. Councillor, well, Councillor Booth has asked something. Is it on this issue?
It is, Chairman.
Councillor Booth.
I'm conscious that Andy Byrne gave what I would suggest is a fully reasonable answer on the original condition that should further activity be monitored and discovered during the build, then further mitigation needs to be brought back because they would be in breach of that condition, Chairman. Thank you. Move to the vote.
Okay, there is a proposal on the floor that we defer pending the outcome of a badger survey across the entire site. That has been seconded. Those in favour, please indicate. That's 4. Those against? That's the rest. Okay, are we abstentions? 1. Okay, so in that event, we'll move to the motion. But those in favour of the motion, recommendation to approve, please indicate. Those against? Any abstentions? Okay, that motion is carried. I am aware that we have 10 minutes to the extension. We might need an extension. I will move to item 3.1. Woodland Farm, High Oak Hill, Highway Road, Newington. From the officer, can we have an officer update, please?
Sorry, just bear with me. I thought we were going to take a break.
Well, I wanted to, but I've been told I can't. I might not get my extension.
We'll be going home to keep it.
Yeah. Are we okay to extend till 10:30?
No.
Agreed, Chairman. Agreed. Good night.
Those in favour of extending to 10:30, please indicate. Four to extend. Those against extending the hours? Okay, then I call this meeting closed. Thank you.
Show, is this closed or adjourned? I mean, so we've got to do it within a week, haven't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.